Can you speak with an English accent? Your answer to that question might depend on what the definitions of English are, since there are so many dialects in English language. Two of the most common types are American and British English. While they're both technically the same languages, there are a ton of difference between these two. Today, we're going to look at the British accents versus the American accents. We also discuss some vocabulary, spelling, and grammar that distinguish each of these dialects. There are a lot of factors that make British and American English different. The most obvious is how they are pronounced the word and how they spell the words. On top of pronunciations, American English spelling differ from British English spelling. They don't always use the same word for the various items. Either finally, certain grammatical structure are different as well. Let's take a look at all of this in more details. We'll discuss two of the most obvious consonants when it comes to American versus English. First, let us start with the pronunciation of R sounds. When you hear a British person speak and then compare to an American speech, the first thing you'll probably notice is that the R sounds very differently. Let's take a look with some example. In British, we say car. The R sounds are silent. Meanwhile, in American, it pronounced car, which the R sound is pronounced obviously. And then there are the word bear and bear, start and start, New York and New York. The next are the pronunciation of T sound. In American English, something happens to the T sounds when it comes after a stress vowel and before a weak one. It turns into combinations a T and a D. On the other hand, in standard British English, the T in those words sounds like typical T sound. This does vary depending on the area of England. However, some Brits use a glottal stop, means that the T isn't really pronounced at all. Let's have a look on the example. There's the word butter on Americans, and then on British it's pronounced butter. And then there are the word water, and in British it's pronounced water. And then there's the words tomato, and on the British it's spelled tomato or tomato. Next, aside from the pronunciations variations we've gone through, British English and American English have different spelling conventions as well. Can have a look at this. There are differences between the spelling or versus R in the word favorite, flavor, savor, endeavor are all spelled with an R. Meanwhile, in British, we can say that they include a U sound, so it's become favorite, flavor, savor, and endeavor. And another example, we can look at the spelling of say versus say. In American, the word we're gonna find the word like offense, defense, and license. Meanwhile, in British, we found this word spelled like this: offense, defense, and license. And the next ones are the vocabulary. Some of British and American English vocabulary are totally different from each other. Let's have a look at this example. In British English, they say high street. Meanwhile, in American English, they say main street. Same goes are car park in British English and parking lot in American English. And in British English, they say flat for the apartment, say lift for the elevator, university for the college. same as the grammar, American and English have some difference in expressing something. For example, when American English over situations, they use can. Meanwhile, in British English, they use saw. We can look at the example of the word of the sentence. In American, they say, "Can I get you something to drink?" And then British would say, "Shall I get you something to drink?" For the future tense, American English use will and British English use shall. So, for example, in American English they say, "I will be there at 8 o'clock." Meanwhile, in British English they say, "I shall be there at 8 o'clock." The use of past participle of get. In American English they say, "I've gotten sick every Christmas since I was 10." They use the past participle of get in gotten form, which is the verb to, which is the verb 3. Meanwhile, in British English, they use verb 2 for the word get. So they say, "I've got sick every Christmas since I was 10." The prepositions of time. American English most likely to use on, meanwhile British most likely to use at. For in the example of the sentence, in American, "I'll see you on the weekend." In British English, "I'll see you at weekend." That is the explanation of the differences between American and English language. It's really up to you in which accents you would like to adopt, but my suggestion, stick to one accent to make your life easier. Thank you so much for your attention.